go. Okay, let's get started. I'm Sandy Tolan. I teach here at the Journalism School. I'm Associate Professor in the Journalism School. And also longtime friend and colleague of our guest today, Marcia Parker. I used to teach at Berkeley, and Marcia also used to teach at Berkeley, so we go back some years. And I'll just want to tell you a little bit about who she is and why she's here, and then she's going to take it away and just talk about her new job, which is making her one of the most popular journalists in California. And she'll tell you why. She is the West Coast editorial director for Patch.com, which is AOL's newest venture in hyper-local journalism. She taught and was an assistant dean at the Berkeley UC Berkeley Graduate School of Journalism. You also ran the Bloomberg Business Reporting program as well, right? And then you joined the nonprofit Center for Investigative Reporting in Berkeley. And through CIR, Marcia and I did an intensive work with 13 graduate students this past semester in a project called Hunger in the Golden State. We'll probably talk just a moment about that later. And that's a big project that's coming out in end of February or early March. And we'll give you a little plug on that later. And she's just left CIR. She was the launch manager for the website of California Watch, the statewide investigative reporter at CIR. And she previously did stints at AOL, where she was director of programming and launched a new business channel, and also served as assistant managing editor at Intuit's Quicken.com, which was then the leading personal finance website. She's also done consulting and editorial content strategy for Yahoo, allvoices.com, among others. She graduated from Indiana University with a degree in journalism and political science. I didn't know that. And a master's degree. I didn't know that either. At Tufts University Fletcher School of Law.
Can you teach math?
She also does media training overseas. Actually, Marcia's done everything. She's worked on all sides of this business, and she's also a terrific person. And I won't give you all the details, but I can tell you she turned down some really, she was one of the, in this business, she was one of the most sought after journalists I've ever even heard of, and turned down some amazing offers to do something that she was very excited about doing. And so I guess that's where we can start. So talk about what it's like in this new job and what you're doing.
Okay, so I don't know how many of you guys have looked at Patch.com or read up, but let me just talk about it for a couple of minutes. So I think one of the most important things to know is that AOL is making this huge effort to make journalism, real journalism, the kind of journalism that all of you in this room care about deeply, as a core product of the new AOL. So if you've been reading a little bit about what's been going on, you, I'm sure, have seen we have this new product called, a new website called Sphere. If you haven't looked at it, you should at some point. We have a new product called Seed, which allows freelancers across the country to become part of the AOL journalism community to write for any of our sites. You've probably looked at Politics Daily this week. Politics Daily, which has surpassed traffic and revenue of Politico, which is a fantastic site in its own right. They started a new investigative reporting unit this week. We have about, I think the last numbers I saw from Tim Armstrong, AOL CEO, was about 1,300. I think it was 1,300 journalists that they have hired and are working among all of our editorial content sites. So it's really an exciting time. And when this Patch opportunity came up, I'd been watching it for a while. Patch is a very small startup. I think there are about 67 people working for it. Tim Armstrong, AOL CEO, was a seed investor in the company, and they had a pretty interesting idea. They developed a platform, which you can kind of see. I'll point out a few things on it in a few minutes. That is a very basic, flexible, I think easy to use and inviting platform for local news. And AOL has said publicly, I think their most recent SEC filings, that they're investing $50 million to build a nationwide network of local news sites across America. There have also been discussions about international expansion that have been, in the press. So I think there are very few companies in America investing this heavily right now in news, let alone local news. That there's passion and excitement about this thing that we call journalism. It's really nice to be in a company that feels that passionate about the work that we all care about. So that's what I went there for. I went there to build and to be part of a team of really dynamic people, and have the advantage of a small startup in the middle of a big company. The company, the Patch team, the main editorial team, or the beginning of the editorial team, is based in New York City. They have a great box in Soho. And when I went there, I just want to mention this because I think this kind of goes to the heart of why I'm excited and why I think many of you will be excited about it. I'm going to introduce, I have a couple of the people on the West Coast staff sitting in this room, so I'll introduce them in a second. It's just such an interesting time to look at Patch, and one of the things that has come out of this whole effort is this kind of entrepreneurial spirit that's being built in the company. And I was thinking about it, I was at a, I'm not going to mention which one it was a major media company in New York City, and I interviewed there that day, and I had a great interview, the people were wonderful, and blah, 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 and everyone kept saying to me, we heard that you're really good at building bridges, and that's why we want to talk to you. And I was thinking, oh, it's interesting, why is that? And all the discussions among all these amazingly bright journalists, really very passionate about journalism, it was all about how hard it was to work in the organization, and they needed bridge builders. And I was thinking about how different it was, that experience going from there to the loft in Soho, where the 67 people are all in one room, all Patch team, and we had such a different kind of conversation. And it was really about the building of this institution, this organization, and about really assessing the needs of local communities, their news and information needs. And I just thought, gosh, I'm having a conversation about journalism, not about building bridges in an organization. And that kind of changed the whole way of looking at things for me. It changed everything really at that minute. And so, I was really excited when the opportunity came along. So, now we're building this nationwide network. We have about, I think, almost 40 sites as of today in New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey. And now I'm, launching California. Sarah Catania, who's committed to, who's involved in this school, which is fabulous, is our first, my first regional editor here on the Southern California area. And we will be launching, lots of sites in California, both in Northern and Southern California. We also have, we're also hiring across the country, but right now the next 4 states where jobs are posted are in Virginia, Maryland, Illinois, and Massachusetts. So, the goal is to build this into a nationwide network. We're hiring lots and lots of people. I've already hired a couple of people from the school who are graduates of this institution, and we are hiring very aggressively. And these are, interesting new jobs. They're local editor positions, and obviously also regional editor positions like Sarah has, and Sarah will be overseeing a group of sites in this area. But the idea is, these are kind of unusual jobs. They're jobs for really entrepreneurial people, because you are working virtually for one thing. These are all full-time benefit jobs, so that's fabulous. The pay is decent. They're the kind of jobs, though, where you have to really enter into it with a different kind of passion, I think. And that has to do with the passion for really reaching people in a community, actually connecting with them, having them help you think about how to reach them and how to find out really what they need. What are their news and information needs? What are they trying to do? What's important in that community? It's not that it's so different from what we've been doing for generations as community journalists. That's pretty much probably how everyone in this room, even the older people in the room, started out in journalism. But it is about something different, because we don't want to just do good community journalism and put it on an electronic platform. We want to try to break through into something different, a new way of connecting with our communities, and a new way of really speaking to, covering, and connecting with our communities. So that's what we're trying to do now. So it's a really exciting time. The company is growing very fast, as I said. And I think we're at a fascinating point in our industry, which I think Sandy will ask a few questions to. We'll try to talk a little bit about what's happening in this arena called local news, because there's a lot of interest in it right now. You know, we have nonprofits playing a big role in that space. We have profit-making ventures playing a role in that space. And we have small companies and big companies all trying to play there and trying to figure out how can we do this and how can we build a viable business model. And that's something that I definitely want to talk a little bit about. I think, I don't know, there seem to be standing in the back of the room, but two of the local editors are also here. Oh, there's Jonathan. Jonathan and Andrew, will you guys stand up for a minute, both of you, and just introduce yourselves to new local editors?
I'm Andrew, as she said. I'm the site editor for Manhattan Beach.
Great, and Jonathan?
Colin Roberts, and I'm doing Hermosa Beach.
So those are our first two. They've been on a few weeks and are starting, and those are our first two communities we'll be launching, and then come to Redondo Beach. And we have lots more. I should say, too, I didn't neglect to say that. Oh, Now's here also. Now, please introduce yourself. Now just started yesterday. She's going to be covering Redondo Beach.
My name is Now Gunji. Hi.
And so the focus point for our sites is towns of around 15,000 to about 50,000. So that's the focus. And we're not going into huge metro areas. That's not our thing. Our thing is to focus on small communities and cover the hell out of them. That's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do there. So I think I'm going to stop there. Good time to take a breather. And
you want to show anything?
Yeah, I'll maybe just show for a second.
And then I'll ask a
Just in
couple
case, because
questions.
I think it is kind of, let me stand up first, so kind of everybody's way. So I picked this one only because Amy Jeffries, who's the local editor, was a former student of mine at Berkeley, and she's the local editor. And, I just kind of wanted you to see if you haven't already looked. This is a pretty straightforward platform. We do all the normal things. If you click on the news tab, you'll see, there's business, government, breaking news, et cetera, et cetera. Schools is a big focal point for us because we think that's really important in our communities. I want to talk for a minute about volunteerism because I think this is an interesting part of the model that we're using, and that is we don't just ask, we require all of our local editors to volunteer 5 days a year in the community at some kind of organization. We give everybody paid time off for that. The sites give back 5% of their ad revenue to the local community, and the local editors are involved in helping select which local nonprofits might benefit from that, which I like a lot. You'll see sort of the beginning of the business model. We'll talk more about business model later, classified as kind of a first effort down in that path. And the site platform allows you to do a lot of things. You can post, you and your community can post photos, announcements. You can do slideshows. You can do kind of just about everything. That the open source map, the open street map, I like that a lot because what it does is when the reporters, when the editors are posting stories, you can very quickly identify all the locations, and it will show up on the map for every story. So, it's a pretty straightforward platform, and the sites all have the same look and feel. This is really the first generation of the platform. They're doing a lot. Almost every week they're making changes, adding new functionalities, all sorts of stuff like that. We have a great engineering team, and we're really developing this thing called Patch.com as a group, which is one of the things I love. That it's a very from the bottom up kind of organization, and everybody's really engaged in really the development of the product. So I'll stop there.
Cool. All right, let me ask you a couple of questions. Thanks, Marcia. And then open it up because I'm sure there's plenty of questions. I've got tons, but I don't want to monopolize. But let me ask you, one of the first things that came to mind when we were brainstorming, talking a little bit about this earlier, is how do you compare the model of this? Obviously, it's a nationwide network of hyperlocal, but it's also a large media corporation. Comparing both in terms of content and model to something like MinPost or Voice of San Diego. What do you do? Is there a lot of overlap in terms of the overall model and structure and content, or what differences do you see?
That's a good question. I still think that the business model is developing as the product develops. But you know, we have a pretty clear path to what we hope will be a variety of good revenue sources. We have, you know, listings you can see there, so we have teams that go out and develop, those listings are all free right now, for all the local businesses and kind of anybody who's sort of a player, so that if you're looking for information, you can find it there. And eventually we'll have additional products in that space, you know, maybe premium listings, et cetera. There'll be all sorts of different kinds of things like that. We're putting regional sales teams in place. And you know, the kinds of people we really hire are people with local selling experience and online experience, because that's what we do. So that's another level, and they'll have all sorts of partnerships and maybe some marketplace opportunities, et cetera. So they'll have a whole series of revenue streams that will support the business model. But you know, this is the beginning. We don't have it yet. I mean, we're just starting, and one can only hope that as we grow, we are certainly determined to develop a sustainable business model, and we're going to try a lot of different things. You know, as Sandy just mentioned, you know, the Voice of San Diego, the, you know, California Watch, all these different players in this arena that we're in. I think, you know, one thing that I think is really important for all of us, and I think we're really all striving for this, is breaking down the walls that have in the past kept us from partnering in interesting ways that help promote the business model. And already we can see that that is changing. Catch has a very open approach to partnering. They don't have an attitude that says, oh, you're a local competitor, so you know you can drop dead. The idea is, no, we'll put links out for you. You do that for us. We want to. Maybe we're already thinking about all sorts of ways of partnering together. I've already had talks with the Voice of San Diego, with Scott there, and a bunch of different people. And Brian Farnham, our editor's been talking with lots and lots of different players in the space about how we can do this together. Because none of us have enough resources to really hire the entire community and communities across America fully. So we could do stories together with different organizations. We're totally, you know, we're willing to consider that kind of idea. We might partner in some other new, unforeseen ways. Sandy and I are already like developing some ideas, and you know, we're talking to Geneva and others here about Hatch being able to play, being able to produce stories, articles, series, whatever we want to do together for the sites, and that we can work with schools. We're talking with the schools about giving them the Patch platform to work on if they want. Some schools are really excited about that. Some are like, well, we already have a platform. It doesn't matter to us. We're just open to the idea of like exploring different ways of doing this. And I think that's what our industry needs right now. You know, the walls have got to come down, and they are starting.
This is such a different conversation than what we've had and so many other, you know, so much of the conversation these days is obviously about newspaper contraction. Here you're actually hiring all these people, and you're also sort of steering the ship of like, where do you want to go and what do you want to do? How do you decide? Where do you open, you know, how do you decide Manhattan Beach and Hermosa Beach and Laguna Beach, and what goes into that decision? When to open the site, and demographics, and what are some of the questions?
There are, you know, we have a lot of different data points, and we, you know, first of all, you know, at the beginning of this is we need a sustainable business model, right? So we need to be able to have enough revenue coming in from the sites to create the sustainable business model. But at the beginning, you know, we have a whole bunch of different things. We look at demographics, we look at how we can cluster a group of sites, because we try to cluster them in groups of around, you know, roughly 10 or so. Obviously, you know, when we move from here to the, you know, Inland Empire, we're going to need, you know, more people. Not, you know, Sarah's not going to commute every day in the Inland Empire to see all our people. So, you know, we're building an editorial organization too. So you have to really think about a lot of things. You know, retail spend, like, is there a downtown? Like, how much business is there that can help sustain that business model? You know, it's just a lot of different factors, and we have, you know, a whole series of things that we rank and order and develop. And then, you know, the other thing is just trying to stay really close to this idea of, you know, 15,000 to 50. It's really easy. We have hundreds of people across the country have written in because on the patch.com homepage, we say, if you'd like Patch Town, write and tell us why, and what's going on. So people are responding all over, including globally. And I just find it so interesting that that's happening. So, we have to have a path, though, the structural path that gets us there, right? And so we have to have some data points that will help us look, and also the discipline to stay on that path in the beginning, because we've got, 50 states and we're only in, not even half a dozen yet. So, you got to kind of do this in a systematic way. And, one of the other things that we're really trying to do, which is good for all of you guys, is, and I'm sure part of this is because, we have a passion for young people, and if you've read up a little bit about some of the stuff that's been written about Patch, there's been a fair amount of coverage. Some people say, oh, you're only hiring young people and blah, blah, blah. And so, I always stop and say, so what was wrong with the young people again? Like, I don't know why that's even really a point exactly. But it's actually not true that we're only hiring young people. But the point is that we actually believe that young people are really valuable to this entity, and that, you are a generation with the skill sets that we need. And this value that we put on multimedia skill and new ways of storytelling, new ways of connecting with community is really important to us. So many of those skill sets come out of this generation, not generations that are a lot older. It's just true. But the fact is, we are hiring lots and lots of people with lots of experience. Sarah's years of experience. All our regional editors and the executive team have a lot of years of media experience, and we're looking for people that really want to build something. That's what we want, and not everybody wants to do that, but lots and lots of people really do. So it's a great time to be looking.
Talk a little bit about the content. How is it different, say, from a local section of a newspaper, or for that matter, West of San Diego? It's obviously really early for you. But what sort of content do you envision?
Well, if you look at the site so far, I would say that the strength of the coverage that we have now is that our local editors are really close to their communities. I think there could be people that would look at the sites and say, oh, does this really matter? There's so many more bigger, more important things, but we don't really look at it that way. We look at it, these are the things that matter in our towns. If we have a national angle, fabulous. The Haiti story gave us a whole bunch of opportunity, and the stories got picked up. And that's great. But we're trying not to get distracted by that, because we actually want to look at our communities and say, what is important here? And you know how it is in journalism? For so many years, I feel like we've been very far away from our audience. We've kept a wall there. And I think that we're trying to have our local editors have a more unique kind of relationship, with the community, that's a closer one. And we're experimenting with having office hours in our communities, and literally kind of moving from a business to sit around every week, and actually just have real people come and just sit there and talk, like without some fancy schmancy agenda. Well, now we're gonna have a community forum about X. No, what's on your mind? What's happening? What's happening with your kids? What's happening with in the senior center? Like, just understanding what's important. I think we want to listen more than we often tell reporters to do. And I think that's an important thing. I think we'll discover a lot as we go about what's important in our communities and how we can do journalism in a different way if we understand and communicate with the communities better.
Let me stop monopolizing and ask
Questions.
you all to ask some questions. Judy.
Yeah, Marcia, I'm writing a book about small town weekly newspapers. It's just about to wrap up this week, actually. Sent it to the publisher. And one of the reasons I got excited about this is because I was so excited to see that they're thriving, and for all those reasons. Hyperlocal, transparent.
Great.
But almost every, now, the towns I'm covering are 10,000 or less. So not in your population grid, but although I'm real worried about this. But the one thing that I get from all of them is that it's our paper. They don't say the paper, they say it's our paper, and they always, the editor lives there. Oh, it's too close for comfort sometimes. And the holy trinity of their coverage is high school sports, obituaries, and the police blotter. So you're kind of looking at, I'm just wondering, you say they're close to the community, but they don't live there, correct, your editors?
I think about 90% of our editors live there.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, we actually try to get everybody in their communities, some people might have come on board and they have leases, and so they're not there yet, but that's the goal. And if they're not there at that point, they're like 10 minutes, you know, really close.
So
I mean,
how
that's
much
basically the idea.
individuality, I mean, you've got this overview patch, but how much individuality is allowed within the realm of that one patch? In other words, you know, because one thing that's great about weeklies is that they are also distinctive in their personalities.
Yeah, you know, I think if you look at the sites, you will find that they're incredibly like that. Because first of all, it's not a very top-down organization, so that's a really good thing. But also, you know, you can see if you look, I just think this is really interesting about Patch. If you look and see, we have each of the local editors has a profile up, and we call something, we have a little section there that says Fess Up. And you know, they talk about their beliefs and kind of what they've been involved in their lives, and whatever they want to share, they share. And so, you know, there's been a lot of interesting discussion about that. How much do you share? What do you want to say? Can you say what your religious beliefs are, your political beliefs? Some people are really, some of our local editors are totally like, yeah, I'm great, I'm fine with saying that. I want to be able to say. Other people are like, no, I'm not 100% sure, you know, where's the line? Well, we don't know where the line is, but we want to try to experiment there, get to know people.
Are you competing with the advertising that goes now to smaller newspapers? Just curious.
You know, I don't know yet. I mean, I think it will be, I think it might be true that, I think there's two things that happen. One is that many small businesses and communities across the country aren't online yet. And so AOL is, you know, we're giving them that opportunity. We're going to make it really easy, and we'll do it for you if you don't know how to do it. We're going to have I don't think those are, I don't think the self-service sort of ads are up yet, but you know, there'll be, that kind of provides that vehicle, a simple, easy vehicle for them at a price point that can work. You know, I think there's a lot of discussion even about maybe there will get to be a place for us selling the local inventory, you know, ad inventory for other news organizations in those areas or whatever. I mean, it's such a new business model. I don't really know the answer to that yet. But I suspect that for many small businesses, this will be a great avenue for them to get online at a reasonable cost. And I don't know if it will really impact significantly the local papers.
What do you think, Vicky?
Well,
Hard to know.
are you considering partnerships with, if there are local
Papers.
or news organizations? You got broadcasters.
Yeah, I mean, we're already having conversations with, you know, cable, I mean, all sorts of places. Small papers, big papers, I mean, it's, you know, we don't have a rule. We don't have a rule yet. You know, there's no like, okay, this is it.
So you don't have
interesting.
if this community is served already by an established news organization, it doesn't fall down your list as far as a potential site.
Not that I've heard.
Well,
I mean, I
that's
haven't
great.
heard that. I think it's just so early in the development of that side. You know, we're just beginning to hire the first the sales teams and the marketing people and all of that. So I think we're pretty open. Yes.
I could actually like to contribute to the conversation regarding sales and whatnot. Even without it, they're still putting the listings up of every business in the community for free, and I actually participate in that. And the community is so responsive to the opportunity to be able to just, we take pictures of the outside, they'll let us take pictures of the inside. I go and I talk to business owners and managers and just ask for like 4 sentences. Well, I usually write about 10, but you ask for about 4 sentences, like how long the business has been there, do you live in the community? And even an idea of like inexpensive rotating ad space. Just for every time you're on the site, you can rotate through these listings, and it can be done so inexpensively, but they're already online at no cost to the business owner. And that is also going to, I believe, draw a lot of interest into this site. Just to, you know, we're building a relationship for free, and that's something, every time I walk in, they think I'm selling something usually, and I'm not. And they're really responding so positively to the attention that they're getting in their small community, because if you go on City Search, you might just see negative or positive customer reviews. You don't really see the owner's perspective all the time, and that's one of the things I think is really innovative about the community outreach that Patch is trying to do.
Great.
Other
What
questions?
else?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about the demographics of the communities that you study before you go into them, and if the fact that they might already have an existing weekly newspaper or online site affects your decision to go there?
No, it really doesn't. I mean, it really doesn't. We really aren't looking at that. We're really looking more at, is there a sustainable, does it fall in this 15,000 to 50,000? And is there like enough sort of, you know, business in that community? These are only 2 of many factors that we look at that, you know, help us know that we can sustain the business there. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. And, you know, also then again, is there like a sort of a cluster that makes sense for us to start? You know, you have to have like a starting place in every place. And that's, you know, that's what we're looking at.
What are some of the other demographic factors you're looking at?
As I said, I think I mentioned most of the key ones. You know, we look at the retail market, we look at retail. No, I mean, really, those are the key ones. I mean, we're not like trying to say, look, you know, we have all the census data and all that for everywhere that we've looked, and, you know, we've mapped out the various states, and, you know, we're just trying to look at a place. Of course, we look at competition, but I mean, I look at all the places that we're going into. There's plenty of competition. You know, I mean, so that clearly hasn't had any real impact on us. We don't think differently because there are competitors in the space. It just doesn't change it for us because we don't think that we're not there to drive anyone out of business. We actually want there to be a wealth of opportunity for news and information needs to be met in the community. So, you know, it's fine with us to have people playing in that space.
Is there a strategic timeline at all? Knowing that obviously everybody's working on a business model. That is the golden grail, or the holy grail, whatever it is these days. But is there a strategic timeline that the money will keep coming until what point? I'm just.
You know, I'm not really at liberty to talk about that, but I mean, the only thing that AOL has said publicly in their SEC filing is they're investing $50 million in this. I mean, that's a lot of money, and that will take us a while to spend that money. You can't spend $50 million wisely unless you take some time to do it. And you know, I don't think there's. I have seen absolutely nothing other than that commitment, and you know, to scale it as quickly as we can, but in a reasonable fashion. You know. There's nothing, you know, we could be doing thousands and thousands of sites but at a time, but you can't really maintain quality, so we're trying to do it in a sort of an orderly pace, maybe a few hundred in a year, and, you know, just gradually build out. That's why we're not trying to do all 50 states right this exact second. We have the next 4 scheduled, and we're, you know, slowly through 2010 working through those, and then we'll move on, and, you know, that's our game plan.
Question over here.
Yeah, back to the issue of community. In terms like, are you choosing communities based on areas that already have like an intrinsically community sense? Because obviously not all communities are the same. Some are more fragmented, others have more of a sense of identity. And the reason I ask that is because I was part of this APOT program here, and we built an online community for a small, very, very super local niche group. And it didn't have a strong community base to begin with, so we ran against some big challenges. So.
You know, that's like a hard one it's a really good question. I think it's a hard one to know. I mean, you can't really, I don't think there's like sort of a benchmark data to figure that out. I think you kind of know that more intrinsically, like you go to a place and you kind of know it's more fragmented, and you're not 100% sure if you've got like how much center, you know, of community there is. So I don't really see that that's really reflected in what we've looked at. I think it's kind of more like we see a chance in communities of that size. That's where more, you know, many communities have lost a lot of their resources that are covering those communities. And we didn't really pick them according to that, but I'm just saying what I've seen as we've been going into them is I mean, of course it's true. I mean, you can almost put a dart anywhere in America and see this, right? I mean, this is just what's happening. So I think that we will just make a difference just by having an additional important presence of a local editor in those towns. You know, it's not like going into a community with a really, you know, major, you know, very strong local newspaper and having hundreds of reporters going in, you know, against it, because that's not really the idea. We have a local editor. Each of the local editors has a freelance budget, and we hire freelancers, and they come on, you know, it's actually a contract. I didn't really talk about that, but, you know, they come on contract, and, you know, they're paid regularly, et cetera, et cetera. But still, we have one local editor. We're trying to develop an important site for in that community.
Just to follow up before I call, there's a couple questions over here, but just to follow up on that question, would you consider at some point, or is the company considering neighborhoods as well? I mean, here in LA, I mean, how many neighborhoods? I mean, would you imagine you could do Los Feliz, or Silver Lake, or
Right,
South
right.
LA, or whatever do
You
you
know, it's a
think?
really, I mean, has been discussion about that, I just don't, I think two things. I think right now, we're really clear on what our strategy is, and we're not gonna vary from that, because we have hundreds of these communities of this size that we wanna focus on, right? So that's where we're going. Where I think we might see some expansion in that area is through our partnerships with schools. We don't have any rules about this yet, we're just having these initial discussions, but we certainly see, like you guys have several really amazing neighborhood sites here. You know, Berkeley, you know, almost every school is doing this, and it's, you know, really, I so believe in the role of schools in this arena to really support our communities and cover them. I think that potentially that's where it might start, is taking in some of those communities in that way, that maybe they'll use the Patch platform, or we'll partner in some way, and that might be the route that comes. But I don't, you know, right now, you know, you gotta have like a clear path to a strategy, and that's where, you know, we're kind of staying in that space. A lot of communities, I mean, including, you know, San Francisco, LA, just everywhere, people have asked about that, but I think right now we feel pretty strongly this is where we should stay.
I'm curious, when you choose to enter a new community, how do you publicize Patch to that community and get community members visiting the site and contributing to it?
You know, there's a whole variety of different strategies that we use. We're just starting to have discussions with our local editors about this. I mean, we host, like next week in Danville, which is in the East Bay, near where I live, you know, we're hosting our first kind of open door community meeting in an evening, and, you know, we've reached out to everybody, and, you know, it's gonna be a really informal kind of thing, and we're gonna sit and talk about what we're trying to do. Patch also, you know, invests a fair amount of money in the communities through marketing things like, you know, every Patch town sponsors a Little League and, you know, does things like that. We have a lot of different, you know, on the sales and marketing side, they'll be part of the, you know, the chamber and the whatever. I mean, you know, it won't be the editorial people, but, you know, we have to be engaged in our communities. And, you know, our local editors are volunteering, and, you know, this is it. I mean, it's all about being the face in that community, and we just expect people to really spend a lot of time in their communities. That's why we want to do this whole idea of this kind of office hours, which I think is really a great way for communities to get to know one another. And you know, over time, we'll do more of these kinds of things. We want to have these ongoing community meetings and opportunities like that. We're inviting, you know, we're actually going out and inviting, like, San Ramon, a community where we're going to launch. You know, we're going to the teen council and saying, hey, we want you guys to come and get engaged with us. You know, because San Ramon happens to have a teen council. Well, that'll be interesting. I mean, I don't know what all will come out of that, but we're in the beginning of a discussion with them. How can you help us be engaged? How can you help get the word out among young people? Doing the same thing with senior centers, you know, kind of everywhere we have an opportunity. I mean, it's really, you know, it's really interesting when you free yourself. Well, first of all, there's not a path, so you have to figure out one and you have to test. Like, so the kind of bottom line expectation that we have is we are going to innovate in this space, and it means innovating with how we interact with our communities as well as the editorial products that we produce, you know. And that requires you to stand back and think a little bit differently about how you're going to do it. And, you know, all the local editors, a couple that are sitting in this room right now, and, you know, Sarah will be thinking about this 24 hours a day in the next few weeks, once she actually starts next week. This is what we got to do, is get out there and think differently. And I like the idea. It's scarier to not know and to have to experiment, but that's also the exciting part about it too, is that we will have a chance to go into a community and listen and then try something new.
You asked my question.
Emily,
That was my question.
oh, okay. Other questions? Yes.
Are any of the community meetings or reportings going to be in other languages?
You know, we've been already talking about languages. The platform's actually built in such a way that we're capable of doing languages. So I don't know exactly at what point, because it's still so small, you know, we're just barely like getting started. But we envision the possibility of that going forward. And, you know, I've been making a point of making sure, particularly in California, but also in New York, of hiring bilingual people. Really important, not to mention a diverse group of people.
How is the self-serving advertising?
Can you speak up a little bit?
The self-service advertising system works because the local, the New York Times also uses other. How is it working?
How is it working? Do you mean like technically how's it working?
No,
is it working? You know, we have so little experience yet, but, I mean, it's really so early. Like, we're just barely getting our sales teams out there and the self-service. I mean, I think we have, you know, I don't even know if I have any valuable, you know, information to share at this point because it's so early. I mean, I think we're really hopeful, but I think where we're going to find out how it works is in having really successful sales teams that are really out in the local communities, because they're going to, you know, have these really small territories, and they're going to just have to know everybody. You know, it's going to be the idea. It's like really sitting down with every small business and saying, okay, what don't you know how to do here? We'll help you. You know, a lot of it is that bridge.
I am kind of curious about the actual structure. You're the West Coast editorial director.
Yep.
So how many counterparts do you have? I mean, how is,
More
you
yet.
say 60?
We got 3 more to get.
Okay. No, I'm just trying to
yeah,
have a vision of this
yeah.
structure, because
Yeah.
the ideas are great, but you're talking about what is literally attempting to get grassroots, hyper-local involvement.
Yep.
So how does your structure, what often has killed many, as we know, major corporations, is the bureaucracy that is created by the corporation itself. So that's, I'm just curious how these strings all...
Really good question, Vicki. Well, you know, it's such a tiny group of people to start, so we don't have much structure yet. You know, Brian Farnham, yeah, it's good. And actually, one of the things I really like about the approach that Tim Armstrong is taking, you know, Tim is the new CEO of AOL. You know, he came on just in April, and as I mentioned, he'd been a seed investor at Patches. He said from the very beginning, you guys don't have to like move to Dulles, where AOL's headquarters are. Stay over there in your little space, you know, grow the company. Take the advantages you can take from AOL, but you don't have to get slowed down by the big monster. Stay and create and hold on to that entrepreneurialness of the startup. So I really like that, and I think it's going to help us. You know, editorially, you know, Brian Farnham is the editor-in-chief, and you know, I came on as the editorial, you know, first editorial director here on the West Coast, and then we're recruiting for our others so that there will be a counterpart for me in the other 3 parts of the country, and then regional editors and local editors. That's it. I mean, there isn't anything else yet. And I don't know that we'll have a lot of additional. So far, we don't think we're going to need that. But going forward, there's all sorts of things we might add on. But I think that'll, you know, that kind of structure is what we're looking for now.
Okay, so which is beautiful. That's the editorial.
Yeah.
Now, where's the business side?
Yeah. So the business side, it's very simple. I mean, exactly the same thing on the other side of the line. So we have directory managers who do the listings in each part. So there's one for each of the clusters the same way. So we have our first regional directory manager in Northern California, and have just recently hired someone here in Southern California. And then right now, the regional sales teams are being formed. The New York, Connecticut, that area has already got all their people. So we're doing the same thing now in California in each state. So that's how it's set up. So then there's the directory team led by a manager, and then there's the sales and marketing regional. So they are handling Northern, and then there's a Southern group. And then I know right now they're looking for a chief marketing officer to start really, you know, developing a big picture marketing strategy for Patch. That's basically the business side so far.
Where do the conversations between editorial and business side occur? Because that's basically what brought down, in my mind, traditional newsrooms. The failure, the lack of communication.
Oh, absolutely.
Not the crossing over, but the failure of both to understand the other.
Yeah. You know, I completely agree with you. So we've had those conversations before. I mean, one of the things I really also really love about Patch is that we're trying to, you know, we have an appropriate wall there, but we're trying to build a product together.
Right.
This is supposed to be the idea. And everyone who's on the team so far, this is a little group of people, came to the same, you know, came to do that. So we're not afraid of each other, and we actually like to spend time thinking about what we can do to make this be something important and, you know, important in our communities and viable from a business standpoint. So, you know, it's not like I'm going to all the, you know, meetings with advertising. That's not really the idea. But for us to think about, okay, so how do we do this, and what do our communities need? We have to learn from each other. And I've said to, you know, the local airs and to, you know, Sarah as well here that, we have to take every week and learn what we're learning. You know, we have to share every single week, like what happened in that community this week that is going to inform us, whether it's the business side or the editorial side. And we have to capture it and keep that going. And that's what we're actually trying to do as an organization. That's the way Brian runs it. You know, Warren Webster, the CEO, is, you know, really dynamic. And, you know, we just say every day, this is really hard, you guys, what we're doing. And we have to find a path to making sure that we are transparent about what we're doing to our communities and internally. So, you know, we have all these meetings together and we try to just talk a lot, you know. I think it's really important.
Daniela, you had a question.
Yeah, actually, sorry. If I could follow up on that a little bit. For starters, okay, you said you're actually trying to have a process to document what you've learned and to build on it. How are you doing that? Because I know once you get going on this type of a schedule, it's practically impossible. How are you sharing between your different members?
Yeah, we're just, I mean, to be honest, we don't really have a full process in place. I mean, Brian and I are like kind of brainstorming about that a lot lately and trying to think about how we're going to do that. Like we might do something on the patch.com home, you know, that site itself. Like we're thinking about that. I know I really like, because, you know, partly I was doing this while I was at California Watch at CIR. You know, they have an Inside the Newsroom on the homepage of California Watch, and that's where they kind of try to share what they're experiencing. Yeah. And, you know, so I've been talking a lot about, like, maybe we could do something like that. You know, where I see that just last week, Brian Farnham sent out this kind of survey thing to all the local editors, and basically, like, said, you know, we do these calls all together on the phone, you know, because we're not all obviously in the same place, and just kind of said, like, tell us what you're learning about these 7 things, you know, and doing the same thing on the business side, and then, like, you know, getting together. You know, I mean, partly, you know, we're at AOL, so we have, like, video conferencing capability and all these kinds of things. So, you know, it's actually pretty easy for us to gather everybody together and think together, even if we're not all in the same room. So we have to figure out ways to do this. There's not, like, an answer. I don't know how we'll do it yet, but I know that we're beginning to put some ideas in place, you know, the survey, the video conferencing, and then, like, how might we show the transparency? Like, how will we share it?
Would you consider allowing...
There's a couple other people with their hands up. If I could just get...
What pieces of, what aspects of AOL's size, infrastructure, reach, and so on are most important to you to patch, the local patch operations, and competing with kind of locally grown operations? Jeff Jarvis estimates there may be 10,000 local news sites now in the country. Most of them, coming up from the local level. Yeah. But obviously, I assume AOL has advantages of platform and other things that will enable perhaps patch to compete at a higher level than some of these homegrown operations.
Well, certainly, I mean, such an important question. I mean, we're really at the very infancy of exploration yet. You know, we believe that that's going to be extraordinarily helpful and valuable to us, but I don't think we really know what it is yet. Like, we're just starting to have the conversations with AOL News, with all these different things. Like, just last week, I thought this was fabulous. We were all excited. You know, we figured out how many, and this is because you have the strength of a big company behind you, how many people live in patch towns that are already on the AOL service. That was really easy because they have all the internal stuff that you can get that data. And then suddenly we were able to integrate right away and pretty easily, technically, the patch homepage to their AOL News homepage, or whatever however they were getting to AOL News, right? So I mean, these are things that are amazingly helpful. You know, AOL's very good at search engine optimization, and you know, if you look at any patch site, it's always #1 and every single time. You know, there's things like that that are going to be really valuable. We're also starting to experiment a little bit with, if you've looked at Seed, I mentioned Seed earlier, the opportunity to tap into a freelance community out there that we might tap and be able to use some of them for stories. There's tons of integration opportunities. MapQuest, we haven't even, you know, MapQuest is a perfect thing that we could easily be integrating. You know, there's all discussions going on everywhere trying to look at opportunity to take advantage of certain kinds of assets that AOL has.
Just to follow up on that, though, would one of those things be you know, obviously when a chain takes over, like Weekly, something, one of the assets of that is the legal representation you can give an investigative kind of piece that locally they may not be able to afford if they're sued. I'm just wondering if that's one of the.
Well, we already had media counsel, you know, already working for Patch, so, but now, I mean, I know that we've already connected with our legal team, and so they're available to us, et cetera. So, you know, as I say, like, that's like a really good example, and there's like probably 100 others, and we're already thinking about like having a little team that's gonna start working with AOL. Like, I'm already making kind of a long list of like, I think this could be interesting, that could be an interesting integration point. So are lots of us in, you know, in the company.
Are you looking at social media and or, say, getting some kind of your little patch groups to have a text message group? What I was thinking about is on a campus where we have alerts if there are any problems, but also what some community groups are doing. I live with the fire damages and then the floods.
Right.
And the local community set up, all the citizens, we got text messages from fellow citizens. And also had Twitter feeds and had a Facebook page. And I wonder, there are these local groups of citizens often drawn together by common
Problems, issues,
interests, disasters tend to bring them together. And I wondered if the Patch organization was looking at tapping into that at all, that kind of
I think social media, I mean, Brian and I and all of us, you know, and all the local others, I mean, we try about this all the time. I mean, we are using, every Patch Town has a Facebook page, we're using Twitter really well, I think, so far. And I would say most of our local editors are really skilled with social media, have had some experience with it, and are really excited about going out there and doing things. And we're going to spend a lot of time developing that right now. I think the whole citizen thing that you just brought up, I don't think we've really, some of the Patch towns have engaged with and partnered with some local sort of citizen groups that have either social media tools or other tools where they're connecting. But I would say it's really early for us in that, but we want to, you know, down the road.
Danielle?
In terms of enabling, so you have on your site add an event, add a lot of participatory options. How do you protect against spammers and hate speech, and what are you doing? Are there any regulations on contributions?
There are. I mean, we have the benefit of both AOL and the platform itself has a number of you know, sort of the technical tools that are available to protect from spam, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's really what we're using now. It's a pretty basic set of tools. It's kind of available to every website in the, you know, in the country at this moment.
And so, for example, for events, when I've seen other sites that are open, a lot of, and I've spoken to other editors, one of the issues is that they just get a lot of, you know, burgers are on sale today at like the local diner as an event. Like, how are you?
Well, I mean, people can post events, but the local areas actually do have to watch that. We actually have, you know, calendar editors and people like that that are putting our events together, but the community can post there. But, you know, we discourage that. People kind of seem to figure it out pretty quickly because we're, you know, we send notes to people and say, you know, that's not really what we don't really put that kind of thing in, because this is meant to be a place where you come see what's going on in your community and you can come and go to it, you know.
So I guess the larger question is, your idea is to keep it as open as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple and open platform, and, you know, there's a fine line there. Every community, you know, every news site in America struggles with this issue. It's a huge issue. We're a free country.
We have a few minutes left. Oh, go ahead. And then I'm
Sorry,
gonna have
I mean,
to.
just real quickly on that, I mean, some of the things that when you talk about thinking new, you know, the communities that are already in this space are really businesses. And you can learn actually a lot from intranets and where the traffic is going there. So when you hear things like, well, all they get is the burgers are on sale. Well, if you look at major businesses, the most visited site is going to be their menu because people eat everything. So there's some things that we, you know, typically have rejected that when we're looking at new things like this, I think we actually might want to start considering.
Well, you
Maybe
see,
that's how
the
you drive
directory
traffic.
listings, that's why there's tons of information there. People want that. I mean, it's
Exactly.
a news and information site. We never said it was only a news site. We want people to come there because you're gonna find everything that you need.
What do you need, not what do we
Yeah.
want to push on you?
But it's basically,
Go ahead.
well, that you're choosing, you know, I mean, it's really nice, kind of both. I'm on the board of LatinoLA.com, and that's why we do a lot of aggregation, in which we look at events and commercials, and it is got this certain, it's community,
Right.
but it's a certain kind of community, and you guys are sort of going a lot broader, et cetera, et cetera. I just didn't know whether that was also something you guys take into consideration when you go in a community that is going to be predominantly Latino or African American
Sure.
or whatever, whether that makes a difference in how you guys are working on the site at all, or something you guys consider?
You know, I guess, I mean, I think that, I think our point of view is that every community is diverse and that we actually have to work to represent that on our sites. The same issue that we've been struggling with in journalism for decades. So I think it's really more about making sure that if you are in a community, you are the local editor, that you know all of the community and that you actually represent them and invite them to be engaged on the site. You know, so our events should reflect that, our volunteer opportunities, everything, because this is the community. It's not just the, you know, primarily X, you know, sector of that community, right? I mean, that's really important. And that, again, that's where this sort of new, it shouldn't really be new thinking. This is just pure journalism, right? You make sure that you're out there and that you represent everyone in your community, that you're covering the whole swath of it, not just a little tiny piece. And that requires you to go out and actually do it, you know? Make sure that you talk to,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I wanted to ask you, Marcia, about some possibilities that we, as you mentioned before, you and I have started talking about one particular project, but what kind of collaborations can you imagine with journalism schools? And you and I, Marcia and I have been talking about a class I'm going to teach in the fall called 1 Square Mile, where all the recording takes place multi-platform within a single square mile. We're going to do something with intersections, we'll do something with patch. So that's like one idea. What are some other possibilities you see with university and journalism school collaborations?
You know, what I really hope will happen is that all of the people in this room and everybody else in the school will come together and actually try and think about that. And people like Sarah, she'll be sitting here every day, you know, in Southern California, and she'll have the opportunity to continue to have those kinds of conversations. We just don't have any rules about it yet. You know, we actually want to like try to come up with things that are different. So I don't know, like, you know, our idea about, you know, well, this was Sandy's idea, this 1 Square Mile project. I mean, I just loved it in 5 minutes. I thought, God, it's so interesting. And like our hunger project, you know, had our sites all been up in California, which they're not yet, you know, there could have been all sorts of things that we could do with that. There's so much opportunity. Think about what we could do. I was just talking to one of the local editors about this just this week. Think what we could do with kind of enterprise reporting if we have this nationwide network and we actually try to, you know, watch in every patch community across America what is happening at some particular point. One school impacted by recovery or lack thereof, right? Just like over a year, over 5 years, or whatever. Like we just watched what is happening to it. You know, how is it impacted, or whatever? A family, a single person, or whatever, a senior. You know, there's so many things that you can do if you have a network where you can actually get that small view. You know, close to a town, close to the ground. And we don't have very much. Just from a journalistic point of view right now, we don't have very many organizations that could do it because they wouldn't have the people on the ground. Yeah, we don't have places where you could do it exactly, and together, you know? So, I mean, I see so much opportunity.
Including with possibly nonprofits like Center for Investigative Reporting and California Watch, where you can localize some of this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Just a quick mention, just so that you know, I mean, Marcia and I worked on this project with 13 students. They did 20 pieces across all platforms. We're doing radio. They've done a number of television pieces. It's going to roll out probably in 3 consecutive Fridays in March as statewide public radio broadcasts on the California Report and for the KQED. And then simultaneously, California Watch will launch these to newspapers. And we're going to, if we can find an available date, it's pretty tight, but if we find a little available date, we'll try to do a little sneak preview here and bring the students in because they do really good work and it was fantastic with Marcia. Any last questions? We're about a minute before 1. Anybody else? Yes, last question.
Question about mobile. I mean, because it seems like local community would be perfect for mobile applications.
We're working on it.
Yeah, I was wondering what.
We're not there yet though, but we're working on it. We should have, we've got mobile apps in the works as we speak. Coming soon. Just not there yet. Let me just add one thing about jobs and freelancing. So you have the first three local editors, and you have the regional editor here, who will, I'm sure, be flooded with interest. But you should talk to them if you have an interest in Patch. We also are using freelancers. We're really trying to build our freelance community, and we really want to have a pipeline relationship. I was just thinking about this, that of I think all of the people practically that I've hired so far, they've all kind of come through pipeline relationships with the schools, with the alumni of the schools, and sort of the bigger group as well. Really, almost everyone has come either through that or through recommendations from our local editors and other editors in the country. So, if you want to be engaged with us and you're thinking about an interest, you can reach out. You've got the 3 local editors sitting in the room, and Sarah, so you should come and say hello and talk to us. And as you get a little closer to graduating, we can talk further about that. We are still hiring all over, so we got lots of opportunities. And it's the same with freelancing, because we do right now we're already taking freelance for our first 3 sites, and we'll be launching really soon. Which of you guys? I forget who's going first. Jonathan, are you first?
Andrews.
Yeah, that's right. I couldn't remember. Yeah, so Andrew is taking a break to come here today, even though he's probably crazed right now. Trying to think about his launch next month. So,
All right, well, please join me in thanking Marcia.
How was dinner with my girlfriend last night?
It was fun.
Yeah?
Sarah, so you should come and say hello and talk to us. And as you get a little closer to graduating, we can talk further about that. We are still hiring all over, so we got lots of opportunities. And it's the same with freelancing, because we do right now we're already taking freelance for our first 3 sites, and we'll be launching really soon. Which of you guys? I forget who's going first. Jonathan, are you first?
Andrews.
Yeah, that's right. I couldn't remember. Yeah, so Andrew is taking a break to come here today, even though he's probably crazed right now. Trying to think about his launch next month. So,
All right, well, please join me in thanking Marcia.